All right, everyone, settle down. Today we're going to dive into something that's all around us, something we often take for granted, but it's absolutely essential to life on Earth. Can anyone guess what it is? Yes, that's right, water. Specifically, we're going to explore the water cycle. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Water cycle? Isn't that just when it rains? Well, it's so much more than that. So let's get started. First, let's imagine a big, beautiful lake. Picture it in your mind. The sun is shining down and the water is sparkling like a million tiny diamonds. But what happens when the sun shines? That's right. The heat from the sun warms the water and some of it starts to turn into vapor. This process is called evaporation. It's like when you see steam rising from a hot cup of cocoa. The water is changing from a liquid to a gas, and it's floating up into the air. Isn't that cool? Now, as this water vapor rises, it starts to cool down because the higher you go in the atmosphere, the colder it gets. When the water vapor cools, it changes back into tiny water droplets. This process is called condensation. You can see condensation happening when you take a cold drink outside on a hot day. The outside of the glass gets all wet, right? That's because the warm air around the glass cools down when it touches the cold surface, and the water vapor in the air turns back into liquid water. So what happens next? Those tiny droplets of water gather together to form clouds. Yes, clouds! They're like fluffy pillows floating in the sky, but they're made of water. When enough water droplets come together, they become heavy, and eventually, they can't hold on anymore. This is where we get to the next part of the water cycle, precipitation. Precipitation is a fancy word for when water falls from the sky. It can fall as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. So when you see rain pouring down, remember that it's just the clouds releasing all that water they've been holding on to. But wait, the journey doesn't end there. When the rain falls, it lands on the ground, and some of it flows into rivers, lakes, and oceans. Some of it soaks into the soil, which is super important for plants. Plants need water to grow, and they get it from the ground. This is called infiltration. The water that seeps into the ground can also end up in underground reservoirs, which we call aquifers. These aquifers store water that we can use later. Isn't it amazing how nature has its own way of storing water for us? Now, let's talk about what happens to the water that flows into rivers and lakes. Eventually, it makes its way back to the oceans. The oceans are like the big reservoirs of the Earth. They hold about 97% of all the water on our planet. When the sun shines on the ocean, it warms the water. And guess what happens next? That's right, more evaporation. The cycle starts all over again. So let's recap. We begin with evaporation, where water turns into vapor and rises into the sky. Then we have condensation, where that vapor cools and forms clouds. Next comes precipitation, when the water falls back to Earth in various forms. After that, we have infiltration, where some of the water soaks into the ground. And finally, the water flows back into rivers and oceans, ready to start the cycle again. This continuous movement of water is what we call the water cycle. It's a never-ending journey that keeps our planet alive and thriving. Now, you might be wondering why the water cycle is so important. Well, think about it. Without the water cycle, we wouldn't have fresh water to drink, plants wouldn't grow, and animals wouldn't have a place to live. The water cycle helps regulate our climate too. It plays a big role in weather patterns and helps distribute heat around the planet. So, the next time you see rain or a beautiful sunny day, remember that it's all part of this incredible cycle that keeps our world in balance. But there's more. The water cycle is also affected by things like climate change. When the Earth gets warmer, it can change how much water evaporates and how much rain falls. Some places might get too much rain, leading to floods, while others might not get enough, causing droughts. It's a delicate balance, and we need to take care of our planet to keep the water cycle working properly. Now, let's think about what we can do to help. We can conserve water by turning off the tap while brushing our teeth, taking shorter showers, and fixing leaks. Every little bit helps. We can also learn about our local water sources and how to protect them. Keeping our rivers, lakes, and oceans clean is essential for the health of the water cycle. So, as we wrap up our lesson today, I want you to remember that the water cycle is not just a series of steps. It's a vital process that connects all living things on our planet. It's a reminder of how everything is interlinked, how the sun, the clouds, the rain, and the earth all work together to create a beautiful, functioning ecosystem. Next time you drink a glass of water, think about the incredible journey that water has taken to get to you. From the clouds in the sky to the rivers and lakes, and finally to your glass, it's all part of the amazing water cycle. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be a scientist studying the water cycle, or even working to protect our precious water resources. The possibilities are endless. So, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and remember, the water cycle is a beautiful dance of nature that we're all a part of. Thank you for being such great listeners today.